Good evening. We're going to begin the council work session for September 8th, 2021. If you would please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
This should be risen. I was just going to say that. I don't know why that's down there. That should be
the ceiling leak.
If only we could go to the new building.
Before we begin, I do need to announce that on August 24th, Council did hold an executive session to discuss communication received by President of the Plum School Board. Mr. Thomas, would you begin with our agenda, please, sir?
Certainly. Actually, the first item is going to be an executive session item. Briefly, we've received a request from the Autumn Ridge Housing Development. We've received the request from the Autumn Ridge Housing Development to dedicate the streets in the development, and there have been some issues related to that communication and some other issues related to the actual outstanding issues at the development that need to be discussed in executive session with council for your direction for staff.
Discussion. Agenda.
Item number 2 is the regulations regarding the keeping of chickens. As you know, we had residents come in last month to propose an amendment to our existing regulations. Current regulations require a minimum of 2 acres to keep chickens. Included in the agenda packets is a compilation of there's a lot of information in there. There's the information that was provided by the women that came and proposed the amendment to the regulations, as well as a copy of the North for Sales ordinance. I also have some additional information that we're still compiling because we're waiting from some additional municipalities to get back to us, because we want to have a complete sort of picture of what surrounding communities do. However, I will tell you that it is all over the place. Everything from we don't regulate it at all, people can do whatever they want, to the most restrictive regulations regarding the keeping of chickens. The only thing that I will say from a staff perspective regarding this matter is if council is interested in making amendment, right now, again, as I said, our regulations require a minimum of 2 acres to have chickens. I would just ask that if it is council's pleasure to amend this regulation, I would just amend it our recommendation of staff would be to amend it based on the minimum size requirements, not on all of these other criteria, because they just become too unwieldy to manage and to police. And we really don't have the staff. You know, Mr. Vento and I discussed this earlier this morning. We just don't have the staff to go out there and do this. I would also like to point out that the request to make the minimum land requirement of 2,000 square feet. So you all know that we have a GIS, Geographic Information System here. One of the things that Sam was able to do for me today was to query all residential lots that are greater than 2,000 square feet. So that would be, if you made it 2,000 square foot minimum, those would be the lots that would be able to do it. It's every single one of them, less one.
Wow. And you said in there that's 1/24 of an acre.
And that is 1/24 of an acre, 2,000.
And we are now, ours is 2.
Ours is 2 acres. So I just want to clarify the 2,000 square feet.
0.25 acres?
No, 1/24 of an acre. It's 0.045 of an acre. That would mean that every single residence, now I'm not talking about apartment buildings, you know what I mean, but every single family home, less one property in Logan's Ferry, is over 2,000 square feet or over. So that would mean that would open it up to every single house in Plum. Again, if there is some interest in amending the regulations, you know, if you think the 2 acres is too restrictive, then, you know, we'd be happy to sort of do a review or make some recommendations about, you know, what the implications would be if you were to reduce that down to down from 2 acres. The one thing that we did find in looking at some of the other communities was a number of communities, namely Monroeville, they have a requirement that the coop can be no closer than 200 square feet
I saw
to
that.
any occupied residence, not including their own, obviously. So something like that is easier to police, to manage. It's much more practical, but it's easier from the neighbor standpoint too, because staff's concern with some of these other regulations that some other communities have is when Dave Vento gets his chicken coop, and Dan Hadley is like, well, he's got 5 chickens. No, I only have 4. No, and you have we're getting into these arguments about what you have and if they're in compliance with the regulations. If you make it something as simple as you have to be 200 feet from an occupied, and I'm not suggesting it has to be 200 feet, but that is an acceptable or recommended distance anyway from the staff perspective.
So that was Monroeville's.
Yes.
Ordinance says at least 200 feet, but I don't see anything in here about the limited amount or the minimum square footage for the lot.
So not all communities have minimum square footages for the lot. Some of them have it based on zoning. Some of them only allow it in their R1 and R2, or
Right.
it's all. And we haven't completed that yet because we're still waiting for information back from some of the municipalities to complete everything in our. You don't have ours yet, Dave. The one that staff's been working on.
Okay.
We will upload that to the agenda packet as soon as we get all the completed information in. But the nice thing about doing something like a X number of feet from any occupied residence is that's very easy to control, to measure.
Mm-hmm.
And it's also easy when Dave Vento puts a chicken coop in and Dave Odom is next to him, it's very easy to go, no, it's only 100 feet from my house, you have to move it. You know what I mean? Like, it's easier we think it creates less possibilities for resident conflicts, as opposed to all these other criteria that get way too involved. At the end of the day, whether or not they have a rooster, if you want to have chickens to raise them for eggs, you don't want to have a rooster because then the eggs will get fertilized and you won't have eggs, you'll have baby chickens. So like some of these other things that become more problematic to administer, if there is a desire to change any of these things, reduction of minimum size lots or specific to certain zonings or resident districts, or possibly a minimum distance from an occupied structure approach, we would be happy to put that together and tell you what that would look like. Because what we can do is we can go into our GIS and tell you, well, this is the area that would be able to do it, this is the area that wouldn't be.
So I think this is something that we should take a look at. I don't think we're ready to put it on the agenda, but I think it's something that we should get staff's final recommendation on an amended ordinance, review it, and see if that's something we would consider putting on the agenda for a vote. I agree with you, Mike. It looks like it's all over the board when I look at the information that was sent to us by Miss Uhashek, I think that's how you pronounce her name. But it would be good for staff to independently develop what you think is right for Plum. I mean, I think the guidelines are available from the other municipalities, but we want what's right for us. So I fully support you guys going off and coming up with something maybe for us to review at the next work session. I did have a question though, if anybody knows, when it comes to the approval to have the chickens on your property, do you have to go and submit for some type of a permit? Or what process will we have as far as that's concerned?
Did you get a chance to look at North for Sale?
I did, and North for Sales actually requires a
Right,
permit
it required that and a fee.
and a fee.
It's not an exorbitant fee, but it's a
Right.
decent little fee that you have to pay to.
Right. Now, I'm not sure if that's something that we want to do. Again, I don't know what type of burden that puts on the staff to go manage the permit process, and but we require permits for other things. Is this something that we would want to consider making a permit process for?
I don't know. I don't want to speak for Dave. I know this is his department that would have to deal with
Right.
this. But I don't think actually requiring a permit would be so burdensome for us. I don't anticipate hundreds of permits being issued for chicken coops, but that process could be quite easy, and it would be a way for us to sort of control and know who is
Right. That
is
way we
doing
know
it.
who actually has the approval for them. So I mean, just consider that when you guys are working on the amended ordinance. So.
One thing I wanted to ask is, there's a lot of talk about the chickens here. Is this going to include anything about pigs, pet pigs, things like that? Or is that gonna be something separate? That's one of the other
I think
issues.
that's something that we should, that those are two separate issues. My opinion would be that, the ordinance that we currently have deals with husbandry, right? Animals, I believe. I have to pull it up, but,
Yes, it
Yeah,
does. It's for
I-
raising livestock,
Yeah.
if you will.
I would say that we address that in
I
a
just wanna make
separate,
sure that part isn't forgotten.
right? No, I don't think so.
We should be able to have pet pigs. They make awesome pets.
Yeah, animal husbandry, section 322, paragraph D, in our current zoning ordinance. It deals with horses, ponies, cattle, goats, sheep, poultry, birds, and grazing animals. So, I don't know if a pig is considered a grazing animal.
Well, I think without getting too deeply into that argument, I think the question isn't whether or not that a pig, in the sense that it's intended or anticipated in the zoning ordinance, is a grazing animal. I think the question is, does the borough have the ability to dictate, to decide what type of pet
I understand.
someone can have in their home?
Yeah, and that's certainly a different issue.
I think that's not really a zoning issue. That's, there are some municipalities that have pet ordinances that outlaw, pit bulls and kind of different dogs, different exotic animals. We don't do that. We don't get into that. I wouldn't recommend it either. I mean, most of those ordinances get challenged and they lose. But I think that's a very separate thing.
Okay, I just wanna make sure we don't lose focus on that, because I've had friends have to get rid of pigs and goats and things like that.
Yep, no, fair enough. Any other discussion?
So that will not be an agenda item, but possibly an agenda item for next month.
Correct.
Okay.
Good work on that. I like to see what you guys are building in terms of information.
Item number 3 is the doxing resolution, and I guess that really requires no explanation from me, because you all have discussed this at length, so I'll just...
Yes, so I sent out a draft of the doxing ordinance that essentially addresses this
Resolution.
concern. Oh, I'm sorry, resolution ordinance. Resolution regarding Plum Boro denouncing the intentional dissemination of privacy information being individuals' personally identifiable information that people can use to potentially, defraud an individual or cause harm to their safety and well-being. And so what this resolution does is it identifies what doxing is, and then indicates the fact that it can lead to significant and reasonable fear of harm or actual death or serious bodily injury if an individual's privacy information is intentionally disseminated to the public, and that the practice of doxing public safety officers, public officials, and minors is something that we officially do not support. We do indicate that individuals under the Constitution do have the right to free speech. We certainly don't want to take that away from anyone. But essentially this resolution serves notice relative to our proclamation related to the fact that we denounce it and will forward any indications of this to members of law enforcement in the event that it's deemed to be unacceptable behavior and potentially putting individuals at risk. I, for one, have concerns relative to this just based on the world that I live in cybersecurity and knowing what goes on the internet and seeing how this has been a significant problem. I'm really concerned that individuals could potentially, use a tool like social media to potentially, put the information of individuals like our law enforcement officers, our personnel staff that work for the borough, just because they don't seem to like something that they may do in the course of performing their duties, or something that they just feel that they have the need to do because they want to get back at them. And I don't think that's something we should stand for, hence the development of the resolution to denounce this and to make people aware that, hey, if you are going to put information, the privacy information of individuals from this borough out there with the intention of doing harm, then, we're not going to stand for it. So that's essentially the language that's written into the resolution. And this is what we want to bring forward for a vote on Monday. Discussion.
I like it.
I think it's well written.
Absolutely.
I like it.
Mr. Dice, anything?
I think it's fine. Let's do it. It's an agenda item.
Okay. All right, agenda item.
Okay, item number 4 is the Assistant Emergency Manager position. With the resignation of Joe Fischetti, we do have a vacancy for the position of Assistant Emergency Manager. We're not required to have one, but it is helpful. We have an Emergency Management Coordinator. That is a requirement to have a named Emergency Management Coordinator for every municipality. Our Emergency Management Coordinator is Jim Sims, the Chief of Holiday Park. Joe had been his assistant, and you can have more than one assistant. With Joe's resignation, Chief Sims has recommended Greg Fusco, who, we know Greg's a volunteer firefighter. His resume and his information is all uploaded into the agenda packet for your review, but we've known Greg for a long time. He's a long-time volunteer, a volunteer fireman in the community, and in addition to Chief Sims recommending him, the staff, is firmly behind that recommendation as well.
Discussion.
I know Greg too. Greg's a really good guy, and I think he'll do really well with it.
Okay, agenda item.
Item number 5 is a proposed coal tar ban. I know there's been some discussion. Oakmont adopted a resolution to ban the use of coal tar. Some communities have done an ordinance to ban the use of coal tar. Included in your agenda packets is both the Oakmont resolution as well as the Fox Chapel. Fox Chapel is one of the communities that adopted an ordinance, the Fox Chapel ordinance. We did discuss this at the Public Safety Committee meeting in August. Without wanting to sound at all like we don't take this issue seriously from a staff perspective anyway. The concern about adopting it as an ordinance is the inability to enforce it. And the problem with not being able to enforce it is you have this inconsistency in enforcing this selective enforcement of legislation and all those issues that go along with it. I just don't know how, and I do know the manager in Fox Chapel. I've been tempted to reach out and say, how on earth are you enforcing this? Because the problem really becomes who to charge. Mm-hmm. But the use of this product, if I have my driveway sealed, or if it's used in a lot of roofing applications too, the end user, the person paying the bill, may or may not even know that the product's being used. So I've got to go cite Dave Odom, and poor Dave doesn't even know that was even used on his house. You're going to be upset when you find out it's on your roof and it's a carcinogen, but I think the adoption of a resolution and some well thought out and well done PR on this issue will really help people, so that, because the goal is, what we really want is, we want Dave Odom, when he's having a contractor do work on his house, to go, what are you using for that? Mm-hmm.
Right.
That's what we want. If Dave doesn't know and we have to go cite him for something because he used it, and then I don't even know how that because am I going to test it? Am I going to send somebody up on somebody's roof to test and see if they used it?
Right.
It's really, I really would like to find out from Fox Chapel how they plan to enforce that. But I think we can do a good enough job by publicizing this, the dangerous effects of the use of it, and still have the impact that we need to for personal health and for the environment.
Well, let me just say that, and I get all your reasons why you don't want to do an ordinance, but what good is a resolution when you go to the guy across the street? Say, I just had what I was worried about happened 2 weeks ago, across the street from my house. They redid the little commercial property, albeit with coal tar sealer. Okay, if you come over to my house this weekend, it's going to be nice and warm again, in the 80s. You can smell it as soon as you get out of your car. If I sit on my pool deck to enjoy my property, I have to put up with that smell now. It's, not only is it not pleasant, but it is carcinogenic. Okay, now I used to use coal tar, like I said before. At that time, it wasn't, people weren't aware of how bad it was. When it became aware, and they made a product that is just as good, might cost you a couple more cents for the raw material. And really, that's all the difference there is.
Yeah.
It's not much. Asphalt-based sealer doesn't smell. You get a slight odor when you do it. As soon as it's dry, it's gone. It's not carcinogenic. It doesn't burn your skin. You know, that's the only, how am I gonna go to this, you know, contractor that's across the street? He's a small contractor. He has, you know, he has decent machinery. He's well, you know, he has well equipped and everything, but, and I tell him, hey, you can't spray that on this parking lot. You know, you're gonna say, why? I say, well, we have a resolution. Well, what's the resolution do? It says you're not allowed to use it. Well, what's the consequence? Oh, we don't have it. You can say, watch out, I'm gonna spray you, you know, if you don't get out of the way.
I agree with that, Dave. That assumes, I mean, in your scenario, it's right across the street. You're in this industry, you know exactly. That is the exception. That's not the rule of what we're gonna be dealing with throughout the borough. And even if we had an ordinance in place at that time and you walked over there, he wasn't gonna stop. And so even if you had an ordinance, I can't send out a cop to stop him.
No, but we could send somebody, we could send them
To cite him after
cite
the
them
fact,
afterwards.
and it'll still be
Yeah,
there.
but so with a resolution, you can't do that. So I get that the problem is enforcing it. But if people find out after, if it is, they start to wonder why this thing, especially, like you say, if we do our job and advertise this and tell people how bad this is, maybe they'll become more aware of it. So I don't know, it's just, you know, it's just like, when do you stop letting the stuff go that shouldn't be done?
Is there anything at the county or state level that prohibits the use of this type of material? that
No,
we
and I
develop?
wish the state
Right,
should,
yeah.
the state should ban the use of it. The state can ban the use of it. They haven't.
Okay.
Well, it's a byproduct of the coking
Coking
process,
process,
okay? So if they do that, the chance, and it's also used in stuff like perfumes and stuff like, it's used for other things, but mainly in the production of creosote or coal tar sealer, so.
It's
Those are
actually
the
used,
things that
it's used in for some sort of medical use as well. I forget what it
yeah,
is.
it's got some other uses,
Yeah.
but you can't smell it, the smell's gone or whatever they use. But I'll tell you what, once that's in your nose, and I can smell it. And I can smell it half a mile away. If there's a big job that's been done with it, I can smell it right away. And it goes from, if you're close to it, if you're just driving through a shopping center and was done, you go, oh, that stinks, but you leave. You gotta live next door to it, it's a little different, you know? So, I'm gonna go do my driveway, when they wanna come watch me do it with the asphalt-based sealer, they can this week, so.
Can we maybe inquire into how municipalities like Fox Chapel are doing the enforcement aspect of it, just so we have some visibility into what they're doing before we go down the road of an ordinance? I'm not opposed to an ordinance, but I kind of like to understand how it's being enforced before we
Yeah.
go one way or the other.
I would agree with that, because the enforcement part is key. It's good to have an ordinance, but it needs to have some teeth. We need to be.
I mean, even from a legal perspective, like how, you know, what's the borough's recourse for, you know,
It's gotta be written in the ordinance that there has to be some sort of penalty, that's there that results in a fine or some sort of
Yeah.
action before the district judge.
okay.
So is that something you want us to try and, I assume that's not something you want us to try and resolve for next week?
No.
But
I don't think it's an action item for next week.
No, yeah.
Let's explore Fox Chapel.
At this point, you'd be happy to get it done before next spring,
Yeah,
before the
next
next paving season comes into place.
Yeah, because we're gonna get it done, we wanna do it right.
Exactly.
So it takes
And I'm
some
not
time
saying
to
rush,
craft
I
an
don't, you know,
ordinance.
it's, the horse is already born at my house, you know, out of the barn, so, yeah, it's not a problem. But it's next spring, when the sun comes out again, it'll stink again. It goes away after a couple years, but then it's redone again. So, it's a vicious circle.
Okay, so we'll table that item so we can do a little bit more research.
Item number 6 is the DPW call-out procedure. So Just a little background here. So 911 emergency call, whether it's a house fire, vehicle accident, when the fire companies are called out to a scene, there are times when the fire companies need material. I'll give you an example. There's a traffic accident on a road. A lot of times with these traffic accidents, you have a lot of fluids on the oil, whatnot, that ends up gasoline that ends up on the road depending on the severity of the accident, right? Fire companies keep a material called quick dry on their trucks. It's cat litter.
Pretty much.
They dump it on the street, it sops everything up, they shovel everything up, and they get rid of it. Because we gotta get these liquids off the streets, because they cause more accidents, because they create slippery surface on the roads and all those problems, right? Plus they can leach into streams and things. The other day, it was about a month ago now, we had a really bad accident, multiple vehicles, a lot of fluids on the street. The fire companies ran out of quick dry. They only keep a few bags of them on hand. So they called 911 and said, they said, have 911 call Plum Boro Public Works, send out guys with sand. We don't keep sand. And so now I have somebody else making the decision about when we're calling out overtime. That whole thing led into some other problems, but we have this issue quite a bit. Quite often, I should say. The other problem with that is, I have a fireman contacting the county 911 operator, who then in turn contacts a public works supervisor. So when the public works supervisor says, well, how big is the area? How much sand would I need? How many people do I need? His answer is, I don't know. They just said, please send public works with some sand. I'm oversimplifying this a lot, but I think you understand. The resolution to this, we believe, we've discussed this with staff, the resolution to this is that we would like council to adopt a policy, and then that policy will be amended at the county level, county 911, so that only the police on-shift supervisor can call out public works. There's always a police shift supervisor on, and if there's a bad accident, the police shift supervisor's on it. So they're there. And that way, when they speak to the public works supervisor is talking to the guy on the scene, saying, how bad is it? Do I need a guy? Do I need 3 guys? Do I need 5 guys? What do you need? The way this is working right now, it's incredibly inefficient, frustrating, it's leading to problems. All we're asking is for you to adopt a policy saying that, good Lord, that enables me to go to the county and say, from now on, we have these run cards, if you ever talk about those. We'll go to the county and say, and instruct the county to change the run card so that if a fire company wants to call out public works, a phone call is made to the shift supervisor, the police officer, who will then contact our public works supervisor. It is one extra call, but it usually is happening that way anyway, because in that case, what actually happened is, Bill Binney actually hung up the phone from 911, called J.C. Miller, who was the shift supervisor, and said, what's going on down there? What do I need?
Yeah.
So it's happening anyway, but
It's just
the other way is
streamlining.
causing conflict and problems.
Then we need to alert the fire departments too.
Yes,
And we can
yeah.
take care of that the next chief's
But
meeting.
one thing also I would suggest is it's basically cat litter, but there are better grades of oil dry that are really, it's more like powdery, and it absorbs better. So if I would suggest this, it might cost the borough a little bit of money, but I think we should get a couple pallets of this stuff and store inside somewhere. Doesn't have to be warm.
Well, we
Could be under-
have that stuff,
okay.
but that's exactly.
But then the
point.
firemen could get
That's
more.
exactly the point, is that the fire company said, tell them to bring out sand. So, I got a.
Probably 'cause it was real
supervisor.
thick.
I know, but probably I got a public works supervisor who's going, what do I need sand for?
Sand's only good if it's dry,
And we don't
very
keep it.
dry, and you have to use the fine stuff. You can't use the gritty stuff, so, yeah, it's not efficient.
The other thing that the other benefit to doing this is, on a quasi-related issue in Public Works, we had some concerns from the Public Works guys when they are called out, about being called, especially when we call out one guy and he's out by himself in the middle of a snowstorm to take down a tree that's on a power line. And the concern was, well, you know, I mean, it's 2 o'clock in the morning, I'm up on Stotler Road cutting a tree down. I have a heart attack or fall over and slip and hit my head, nobody's gonna even know. So getting the shift supervisor involved in this lets the shift supervisor know that, hey, there's been a call out, because otherwise he may or may not know. And the other thing that it does is we can implement the policy on the public works side to say, to make sure that when they're called out, they have to call that shift supervisor to clear the call. So that's a little bit more protection for the public works guys. The emergency guys are being called out as well.
Well, is it a policy that something like a call out, emergency call out, I would never call it just one person. It should be at least 2, for their own safety. Like you say, if something like that happens out there and they're by themselves, because typically what happens, the wreck's over, you might get, everybody's gone from the wreck, but the guys are still there doing a little cleanup, either the berm of the road or something. And if somebody's cutting a tree down by themselves, that's unsafe,
My example was a bad example.
Right,
We
okay.
typically don't
It was
do
a
that,
bad
but, like,
example.
there are call-outs, for example, somebody knocks over a stop sign. That happens, there's a car, well, actually, I think people take them sometimes too, but anyway.
Yeah,
So the police would call the public works supervisor. What we do now is, because, that's overtime, it has to be done in overtime. What we do now is we keep some concrete stands for temporary stop signs. And the guy goes in, he gets the truck, he puts the stop sign down, he puts the stop sign in the concrete stand, and then Monday morning, they take that down and install the new one. So there are gonna be those times when it is just one person. So, because that was one of the conversations we had, is, they wanted a minimum of 2 for every emergency. I don't think that's practical, because emergencies mean a lot of different things. But my example was a bad one. For something like a snowstorm with a tree down, we probably
Yeah.
wouldn't call one guy.
Okay, any other discussion? Agenda item.
Okay, item number 7 is the Hoffman Kennel Agreement. We do this every other year.
Yep.
That the agreement's in your agenda packet. The only change from the previous one is that in the 2020 through 2021 agreement, the price for a call-out was $95, and they're increasing it to $100.
Okay. Cost of living expense.
Can you afford that?
I think so.
I have
There's no more than 3.
I have a concern to raise here. And I know it's just the animal lover in me, but I'm not going to be able to vote for this just because of Section C, the part where to hold all stray dogs unlicensed and of good health for a period of 48 hours in which the dog will either be placed or humanely destroyed. I don't like kill shelters. They really bother me. These guys have had a reputation of having issues before in the past. It's just not something I can support. I don't like that clause. I think in today's age, 48 hours is just not enough time to give people to come get their dog. No, just making sure that's no, because I know we like to try to vote 7-0 and things like that, try to be all in uniform, but this is just not something I can support.
that's fair.
Yeah, that's fair.
Yep.
What section is that in the agreement?
It's section
C.
1C.
1C.
First page.
Yeah. To hold on straight. So, Ryan, just so that I understand, there's a difference here between licensed dogs and stray dogs, right? It's the stray dogs that they're going to humanely destroy after a period of 48 hours, not licensed dogs. There's a difference, right?
Yes.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Still, it doesn't sit well with me. I don't like
Well,
it.
no, yeah, no, that's fine. I mean, but I mean,
I mean, it is a difference, I understand.
The statement you made is like 48 hours wasn't enough time for people to come and get their dog.
But there's a lot of rescue groups, there's ways out there to find that
Sure,
dog a
yeah,
good home.
okay, okay.
Especially too, because the big part that bothers me is of good health.
Right.
Now,
I
this is
just
a dog that
didn't,
is sickly, broken bones, this
yeah.
and that. Okay, I
Like,
get
they
it.
could take it to a shelter or something like
But,
that, yeah,
you know, a
I get
dog
it.
of good
I-
health,
I just didn't want to give the impression that we were agreeing with, any dog that they, take into their custody to be destroyed after 48 hours. It's 5 days for licensed dogs. So if you have a licensed dog, you got more than just 2 days to come and get it.
And the 5 days starts after the notification to the owner.
Right, right,
So if they don't notify, if the owner's not notified for 2 days,
right.
it's
What
from
if,
that
what
point
if there
on.
isn't an owner, like if they can't find the owner or something like that?
But that,
Well-
if it's a licensed dog,
Right,
it's got an
they're gonna
owner.
find the owner.
Well,
Right.
I mean, let's face it, not everybody has a small dog that might get loose. It's usually an inside dog.
They better,
licensed.
according to the county laws. You
Well,
got,
I
you got to
know.
have, you've got a dog,
gotta
it
have
better,
it
better
If
be
you went around
licensed.
everybody's house with a small dog, you might make a fortune enforcing that law. But, because I'll bet you 9 out of 10 small dog owners, unless they walk them outside a lot, if they're what they, now, these little dogs, a lot of them are inside dogs,
Mm-hmm.
I'm sorry, but, yeah, maybe I am, I don't know. What kind of dog you got?
I mean,
But you
in
know what
my
I mean.
opinion, I don't care if the dog is small or big, you're required to have that dog licensed. If you're in Allegheny County, you're required to have that dog licensed.
True.
And responsible dog owners have all their shots.
That's right.
Have them licensed, and a lot of them have them chipped now.
Right, but I understand Ryan's concern
Me too.
relative
I
to the
understand.
stray dogs, so I mean, I get that. I just didn't want to give the impression that what we were agreeing to was that any dog they get, you only got 48 hours to come and get it, so
So
that's,
since this is getting live streamed, I would like to just point out that, so we have this exact conversation every 2 years.
I don't remember this.
And I know that, that there's a lot of negative posts about Hoffman kennels on social media. And I don't know, Dave, if you were on council back then, but I hope that, Mike, you'll remember. We had some residents come to the council
Yes.
a few years back, and they said, actually, I don't think it was just residents, I think it was people from all over, if you remember. And they said, Hoffman's Kennels is terrible, so council charged me and the staff with investigating this. And we spent literally months doing this. So a couple things. What I did find is there are just as many people who think he is amazing as there are people who think he's terrible. The West, and I don't want to give any names out, like a number of places that I talked to, other animal rescue organizations that said, no, he's getting a bad rap, he does a fantastic job, we love him. It's just like anything else, you know.
And I found that same
Somebody's
mixed
pizza-
bag when
somebody's
I was
pizza
looking
gets
into it.
a lot of bad rap, and then other people think, no, my God, no, it's the best pizza ever. The other thing is, keep in mind that Hoffman Kennels is a licensed dog catcher, animal officer with the state, it's the agency that you're licensed with is Department of Agriculture. And so any dog that he puts down, he has to put down in accordance with the state laws regarding putting down animals. What they do is any dog that they get, chipped or not, if it's an obvious stray, then if it's the dog of a certain disposition that they think might be able to be adopted out, they will do that, and they have partners that they work with that they'll send those dogs out to. The dogs that are put down are typically the stray dogs of certain temperaments that the shelters won't take. So, and they're not putting down people's pets.
so they do make an attempt to try to, bring the dog to a shelter before they,
And any law, and any dog that is put down is, there's a whole, there's a Department of Agricultural process that has to be followed, paperwork that has to be filed with the Department of Agriculture that is then reviewed by the Department of Agriculture to make sure that he is not carelessly or needlessly putting down animals. So, and all that stuff can be checked with a right to know request or freedom of information request from the Department of Agriculture for Hoffman Kennels if you choose.
And doesn't he do for us, things that we just don't have other qualified people to do the same job.
Well, it wasn't that we couldn't find anybody else.
Yeah.
Well, and I think that's where I'm not sitting here saying, oh, we need to find a different person, we need to do a different
There's not
contract.
anybody else that
Because
does
I
it.
understand with our borough and our size, sometimes the options are just limited, kind of like we had with the garbage contract. There's only so many companies that can service us. It's just with it having that kill option in there, even if it is stray dogs, I can't do it.
No, that's fair.
Can't do it.
That's fair, like we said, this.
I would question, this is just Hoffman that does this, or is this a standard across the industry?
I don't know the answer to that. I mean, I know that, I know that he does it. I know that he does put down dogs. And I've talked to him about this specifically, gone out to his facility to look at it. His policy for putting down animals is consistent with the Department of Agricultural licensings that he has. Unless he's very good at, doing the don't look behind the curtain thing.
The okey doke.
Yeah. He's following the rules. I mean, and I understand that not everybody agrees with all the rules all the time. I get that. Like, and I appreciate that, Ryan.
Well, what would the alternative?
Yep. There isn't.
I don't know. I mean, we've looked at this. Well, there is an alternative. There's a municipality close by us that has their own dog catching services. And,
Monroeville used to, do they still have one?
I believe they still do. That's the
They
one I
still
was
do.
referring
Yeah,
to.
we raise money for them every year.
Our,
actually.
so just so you know, our budget for, not that it's all about the dollars and cents, but our expense for this is averages anywhere from $3,000 to $5,000 a year. The other municipality that I'm discussing has more than one full-time person, so you imagine, you just do the math.
way
on
more than that much.
Plus
I
vehicles.
know the line item, it's well above 300.
You gotta buy your own,
Exactly.
you gotta buy your own truck, you gotta, there's a lot of
So that's an option.
Okay. Any other discussion? Agenda item.
The next item is an executive session to discuss an agreement with public safety agreement. Item number 9 is the stop sign request. I don't know if you guys had a chance to look, and I apologize for the delay in getting you out the
Yeah, I did see
the
that.
manager's report today. I completely forgot about the 5 o'clock meeting with the
Fire department.
companies. I apologize. We got 3. We do get these periodically. We don't get a lot of them, but we do get them every once in a while. And if you didn't get a chance to read in my email, I thought, and I'm not going to rehash everything, but the email that I sent out to the people that requested them sort of identifies the process here. We don't just get to put stop signs, any traffic control devices, without a traffic study that indicates that the traffic control device is warranted. Warranted simply means that it meets certain criteria and conditions that PennDOT places on, intersections, blind curves, all these things. So we're very familiar with a lot of these intersections, and a lot of times these people request it, and obviously, like, a lot of people request the same intersection every couple of years.
Yeah.
In fact, one of them tonight wanted to request Lindsay Lane, and staff would agree that it's got a poor line of sight, it's poor sight distance. Unfortunately, none of the roads are ours. Well, I shouldn't say none of the roads are ours. But the road
Intersects with
Frankstown
the
is
state
not
road.
ours,
Right.
and half of it's Monroeville.
Right.
But we've already, like, for example, in that case, we have already asked PennDOT to review this, and PennDOT said no to a stop sign. And we would.
Which one, Lindsay Lane and Old
Lindsay
Frankstown?
Lane, Old
Okay,
Frankstown.
all right.
And we would agree with that, and this is something maybe that people aren't, and why would they think of this? But I want you to picture coming down Frankstown Road from 286 towards the park. If you can picture on that drive, there's a hump in the road. When you start to go up that hump, you cannot see the intersection that you're approaching. There's a car stopped there, you're gonna hit it. If there's a car stopped at that stop sign, you're gonna hit it. For that reason alone, we would recommend you cannot put a stop sign in. Now, the things to do to avoid that are to take that hump out of the road.
Cut the hill.
That's a PennDOT project. Cut that hillside back so you can see a little better. But even then, cutting the hillside back would help the person trying to make the left from Lindsay Lane onto, but it still doesn't
Still
solve the
coming
problem
down
at
the
all.
hump, yeah.
So while we would agree that, that there's some issues there, The solution is not putting a stop sign there. And we've already asked PennDOT this question, and PennDOT has come back and given us an answer.
We're almost better raising the whole intersection.
No, what about the intersection at Kerr Road there?
So the intersection at Kerr Road, we would have to, what you would have to do is, if you want to do this, you would have to instruct us to formally request that PennDOT take a look at this, because it's PennDOT's road.
But it already has a stop sign. They want a stop light. There's already a stop sign.
Well, they-
On the
they want
road,
stops.
but they're
They
talking
want
about.
stops on
Oh, they want a
Coxcomb
stop
Lane.
sign on 909.
Yeah.
Well, I think they said stop sign, stop light, because I think they kind of understood that there needs to be some sort of traffic study to figure it out, because the amount of traffic there is more than what those roads were
Putting a
designed
stop
for.
sign there is a complete.
No, what you need to do is you need
Waste.
like,
You'd
you
have
need
to
a
do a
turn
light.
lane, you need like, because people were going around people and then people were making the left out. That's how that kid got T-boned a couple weeks ago.
I drive the road all the time. I know what's going to happen. You put a stop sign there, it's going to be.
Stop
it's
signs
gonna
aren't
be a
the
train
answer.
wreck.
Everybody
It
thinks
comes down
stop
to
signs
personal
are the answer.
responsibility. People
Yep.
gotta slow down.
Yep.
I mean, that's all it is.
And not go around people.
Right.
Like stop
Right.
and wait.
Take an extra 5 seconds to get somewhere.
Yep.
Yeah.
Well, that is a big part of the problem, and we do spend a lot of time up there on enforcement. Mike DeMarco, by the way, tomorrow's Mike DeMarco Day at the magistrate's office, if anybody's interested. No, it is. They set aside a morning for him because he writes so many tickets.
Fantastic.
That's great.
I've been there, it's
But,
really
you know,
boring.
we do, what's that?
I've been there, it's really boring.
We do, yeah, Mike enjoys it. So we do spend an awful lot of time up there doing enforcement up there because of that, because everybody, what happens is, somebody stops to make that left on the Kerr coming up 909, and everybody drives around on the berm, the shoulder of the road, actually in the
In the
parking lot,
storage
storage
is
place,
right.
and goes around, and that's when somebody's not paying attention and
It's
something
in
gets clipped.
Mm-hmm.
You know, we can certainly, request PennDOT to do the, study. Just keep in mind a couple things. They're never going to, just my opinion, they're never going to approve a stop sign on.
No, I don't think a stop sign is the answer, but
Yep.
there should be,
What
could be something done.
What they,
It'd have to
what
be a
they
light.
may approve would be a stop light. Just a
Yep.
couple things to understand. Stop lights are ours, not PennDOT's.
And they're expensive.
So it's our expense, not theirs.
Yeah.
Six figures.
And if the traffic study shows it's warranted, we're doing it. The other thing is PennDOT's new regulations, because everybody wants to point me to ramparts right up the street. Keep in mind that that's 20 years old. PennDOT's new regulations, they will not put a signal in intersection without a left-hand turning lane. There's not enough room there
So you
to
have
do
to
that.
widen-
That's-
widen the
there's
street
Not enough
then.
room there without.
Yeah, to do a
without
left-hand.
Widening that road somehow.
Yep.
That was my thought, is if you could somehow get a left turn lane there to get people to park there to make that left and allow trucks still to go up the hill.
Now,
You
now
can't
who's,
realign the
work,
road.
because
now
that's the
if they did,
problem.
now whose expense is it to realign the road? The boroughs or the states?
Pretty sure that's PennDOT's.
You'd have to obtain additional right-of-way in order to make that happen.
They'd have to be willing to do it, they'd have to take additional right, because they'd have to widen the road there.
But,
You gotta
but,
put that left-hand turn
but
lane.
widening the road on the opposite side of the storage company, you know, the storage center, that's just like a field, like before you get to the gas well.
But somebody owns it.
Yeah, who? Is it,
There's also the, you know,
like there's
not
not,
just
there's
simply-
nothing there.
it's- yeah, I agree
I'm not
with
saying
you.
it's that simple. I'm
It's-
just
yeah.
like, there's nothing there, so.
At this point, though, I think the only decision in front of council is whether or not you want to have PennDOT investigate.
Do the study.
Yes.
I think it's worth it. I mean, we roll the dice on them suggesting a light there, because I really don't want a light. I think there's other solutions that are more cost effective, but something needs done at that intersection. It is very dangerous.
They may just decide that it warrants a left-hand turning lane.
Left-hand
but
turning
not a
lane, right,
signal.
instead
I
of a
think
signal
that would be
light.
the perfect solution, in
Yep.
my opinion. Just put a left turn lane there. Because even a stoplight, you get trucks coming up that hill, like, they need to get up that hill. Like,
Yep.
it's gonna be hard to stop them mid-hill climb.
And there's
That's not
nothing
mid-hill.
there.
That's flat there.
Well, then it
So
goes
if
up
there's
another
not-
section of
right,
the hill.
But if they stop behind a car making a left-hand turn, they have plenty of flat to get started again to go up that hill. That's not that big of a hill that a truck can't.
I'm not, I don't
Yeah.
know. I just try to be very extra nice to truck drivers. I really like them.
Pretty good sized hill.
They bring me all my stuff.
I drove it many times with trucks, I know.
Yeah.
All right, so on the first one, on Kerr and 909, are we in agreement with that?
Kerr 909 will do the study.
Let me ask a question first. Dave. I'm sorry to
Yeah,
interrupt you.
go ahead.
Mike, I think you alluded to that if PennDOT recommends it, we have to do it. we can't say, oh, okay, well, we're not gonna do it anyway.
That's true.
And I
PennDOT
think
makes-
we should find out if PennDOT pays for it or if we pay for it first, and what the cost is gonna be.
If it's a signal, we're paying for it. There's no question about that.
Is that paying for the maintenance of it or the
No,
installation?
Purchase,
everything.
installation, ongoing
Yep.
maintenance, it's
Yep.
ours. Signals are ours.
That's all.
Yep.
That's why I always tell people with traffic lights, it's not the solution you want. It costs a lot of money.
It's the initial investment and the recurring cost if it's a traffic light.
Be careful what you
So,
ask for, is all I'm saying.
Alright.
If you look at the recurring costs that we have for our traffic signals, it's,
Yeah.
it's not,
yes, it's,
yeah.
That's why
especially
we
on
need more
Coxcomb Road.
roundabouts. Need more roundabouts.
Oh, my God, no.
Dude, roundabouts are awesome.
If
No.
you,
They're like
you'll
one of the
you'll
best
love
traffic
roundabouts if you
control
ever get,
Roundabouts are not the answer.
if
Not
you ever
there,
if you ever
but
use
other
a real roundabout, you'll love it.
No. I've been in South Carolina for 2 weeks. I've
Down
been
in
through the
Hilton Head,
roundabouts.
yeah.
All you gotta do-
People don't know how to drive through roundabouts either.
Well, there's always a learning curve.
Yeah.
There's a learning curve.
That's why we need self-driving cars.
Don't go to England. Don't go to England.
You need to slow down, you need to slow down and take an extra 15 seconds to get to shop and save to buy a fucking day.
Now, is there
a day
any way
old
we can do
donut.
like a public service push to like try to encourage people to slow down and take their time with the
Mike,
Borough Channel and
do
Vince
we
and things
have-
like that?
Do we have a traffic study as to that intersection in question, as to how many accidents there actually are there?
So, we knew that you were gonna ask that. This is not a high, it's not. In all honesty.
It's a pain in the ass intersection, I granted it, but I don't think
I
it's.
drive that intersection quite a bit too.
Every
and I
day.
would- And
I do.
I was surprised to find out that it is not a high.
Right.
This is the Kerr 909 one.
Correct.
Yeah.
Right.
It's not. Believe it or
Wow.
not, it isn't.
That's
Saying,
surprising.
Be careful what you
Not to
ask
say
for.
What
that there
about,
haven't.
what about
Yeah.
Lindsay, because of the line of sight? Is that,
All I know is that when PennDOT reviews that, PennDOT does review the crash data. Keep in mind too, that PennDOT reviews reportable accidents. They use just
Yeah.
reportable accidents. So if I'm at the
you don't report
stop,
it,
if
they'll
I'm at the
know.
traffic, at the stop sign, and I'm not paying attention, and I rear-end you and bump you a little bit, that's not a reportable accident.
Right.
You know what I mean? The intersection of Lindsay Lane actually did not have significant,
right?
reportable accidents as well.
Well, in your report, it said that the county was gonna get back to you.
Put more
for Lindsay
signs up,
Lane, and
too.
they may put a slow,
Slow.
Slow on the road.
Yeah, they may do something down
Yeah.
there, but,
That'd be good if they do that, because that will alert people of the problem.
so that request was made to, was it the county?
I thought it was a state for that.
Lindsay
road.
Lane.
I think Lindsay Lane's a county road.
Yeah.
Lindsay's county, but
Old
Frankstown's
Frankstown's a state.
So we had met, the chief and I and Mr. Binney met with the state out there in May of this year, before this request. And just recently heard back from the state that while they can't do anything about the hump, they're gonna put up some signage on the roadway for slow down. They're gonna put up a plaque, they call it a plaque coming from 286, notifying drivers of the upcoming intersection. And at the same time, we're reaching out to the county to see if they can do anything looking left as you come down Lindsay Lane. But there's a lot of work that would have to be done, and PennDOT says that, they'd have to wait for a major road improvement project to get rid of that hump. And even then, that creates a problem with the existing driveways, along Old Frankstown Road.
Yeah.
Oh, the Kennel, whatever is out there.
There's a
couple of
there's a
driveways there.
auto detail place,
Yeah.
and then something up on the left.
So we'll just recommend a study be done for the Kerr Road 909 intersection
For now, we're still
now.
waiting further information for.
for the Lindsay.
Just
Okay.
make Old Frankstown one way.
So so then the third one is Holiday Park in Alcan. That was a request to have a stop sign, to put in a stop sign there. Now, I will tell you that I think that was
No.
even more difficult to get to get PennDOT to agree to. And keep it in mind too, that even though those are borough roads.
Yeah, those are our roads, yeah.
You still have to meet the PennDOT warrants for the installation of a traffic control device. You can't just put them up anywhere. And the biggest hurdle with that specific intersection is gonna be is that the problem is time-specific, as it's identified. It's when school children are getting out, and it's in the morning when the angle of the sun interferes with the ability to make a left turn. That's not gonna meet the warrants for putting in a stop sign. But we can certainly, now that, because that's our roads, we would have to commission a traffic study.
Well, I mean, can we maybe, and I don't know if it's worth doing this, but could we maybe have one of the officers go in that area to kind of, you know, manage what's happening at that particular time period? I mean, I'm not saying we need a full-time crossing guard or
We
anything
do
like
have one
that,
right
but.
there.
We have a
We
crossing
have a
guard.
full-time crossing guard right there
At that intersection?
At that intersection.
Then what's
Not
the
at
problem?
Alcan, you have it at.
I thought it was
No,
further,
It's right
yeah.
outside the school.
No,
Right.
There's one
Alcan's
at
up
both. No,
There's one at both, yeah.
Oh.
There's one at
So-
Alcan. There's one right there at Alcan and Holiday
That's right,
Park.
you're right, I'm getting my roads
She parks
mixed
in that
up.
driveway. She must know the people that live
Yeah, see,
right
I
there.
thought we
She
just had the
parks in-
crossing guard that was up
No.
further.
No,
There's-
you're right, you
there's-
do have one outside that
There's
exit
one,
right there.
as you come down the driveway, exiting the O Block and Holiday Park School there, right there, that intersection of the driveway, Holiday Park and Alcan, there's a crossing guard right there.
Then what? Am I confused here?
I think it just, people still believe that stop signs are the solution to all traffic control problems, and they're just not. They're not. There's other traffic control devices that work a lot better and more effective.
I mean, we can look at, you know, do we put some signage in, do we, you know, like some other things, we could strike the road differently. But again, all that stuff, you know, has to meet the PennDOT
You
warrants.
can't control the sun.
We can't just go in and
Right.
just start
Okay.
painting things. So like the question is, do you want us to commission the study for that intersection?
No.
I think we have the crossing guard. I think that's sufficient. They should be
Yep.
controlling the traffic at that. That's what we pay them
Again,
for.
slow down, you're on a, you're
Yeah, so
in a
like, can we do
plan.
like a public service push to like encourage people to slow down, or is there any way to like reward?
Yeah, you give 'em a
like,
ticket.
Reports of
Yeah.
good
You
driving?
You give them a
Give them
ticket. It's called a
tickets,
ticket.
Yeah, positive reinforcement works better. Like, is there any way to reward good drivers? Is that possible?
It's,
Get lower insurance
DeMarco.
rates.
Yeah, right.
Wow,
Yeah, commercial for all
Liberty
states.
Mutual does.
right.
I don't know. Maybe we just need to all like get on like do
call
a video.
Flo, get her to
events and
stand up there and
just-
tell everybody.
Everybody, slow down.
Okay, so the Kerr Road 909 intersection, that becomes an agenda item.
Yes. Item number 10, so, about a year ago, I was talking with Brian Maloney from EMS, sorry. Talking about our AEDs, so the AEDs that we have, so we have a number of them, we have some here in the building, we have a number, every squad car that goes out has an AED, we have a number of them at all the park facilities in different places. So all those things have those pads that you use, those pads are one use, they also have a finite life for them, and then the batteries themselves too for these things, so EMS has sort of a value add to us for the things that we do for them, said, hey, we'll take that on for you, we'll check them periodically, make sure your pads are up to date, get you new pads and all this. As part of that process, we started talking, and Brian mentioned to me that as he goes walking, hiking, jogging, whatever it is, in that trail down in Boston, what's the town?
The Great
Little
Allegheny
Boston.
Passage, Boston.
The yacht trail.
Yeah,
He said he noticed that periodically there are AED stations, so that if anybody, because, see, the issue with our AEDs, even the ones like over at the football field, it's in the concession stand. So if you're over there jogging in the morning and you don't have keys to the concession stand and somebody has a heart attack, just call 911.
Right.
And same at all of our facilities. So Brian suggested that we do something like they have on that yacht trail, and he looked into this for us and everything. So what you have in front of you is the proposal to add these AEDs, I think there's 5 of them, for our facilities. And what it would be is it would be a post with an AED cabinet. The AED cabinet would be battery operated, so it doesn't need power. Its batteries would have to be checked, which that's what he would do for us. But it also has a cellular component, so the minute somebody opens that cabinet, 911 is alerted that that cabinet has been opened. And the assumption is that the AED is being used to resuscitate someone, so EMS is notified as well as Plum Police, because we do respond to those calls. So that if it is some kid just trying to vandalize it, we will still have the police
Right.
people on the way.
Is there some type of camera?
You took the words out of my mouth.
Well, we could do a camera, but the problem with camera is that would require a
wireless
It's gotta
hookup.
go somewhere.
So then let's put Wi-Fi in all the parks. That sounds great.
Yeah, why can't we do?
Let's put Wi-Fi in all the parks, man. That'd be great. Get kids outside doing homework.
Solar power.
We can, it's.
I mean, I
Genetic
just
aspect.
see an issue, we have vandalism problems at Larry Mills Park all the time. And I can see some teenagers up there
But
vandalizing the AED.
Well-
how visible is it? Like,
It's ve-
It has to be
very-
pretty visible because you need to use
Yeah,
it
it's
to
gonna be
save
like,
people.
well, you know,
Okay,
to come
all right,
here for
okay,
AED,
okay,
so.
all right.
Yeah, it will be very.
I was gonna say, you know, put it in, and then if we have a problem, consider putting in the security
Now,
cameras.
at Larry Mills, we have security, we have a security system up there, because we do have Wi-Fi up there. So Larry Mills
You
is.
can put it in
really an
sight.
issue. Huh?
You could put it somewhere where you have sight.
Yeah,
otherwise.
we'll just locate it somewhere where it's got a great we've got a great
Right.
camera angle on it.
Perfect.
But Larry, Logan's Ferry, Renton, over at the
Plum
football
Creek.
fields and the baseball fields, I don't have cameras over there yet.
Well, I like Dave's idea. Let's put them in. I think it's more important to put them in.
Yes,
good
yeah,
compromise.
And
we
then
definitely need 'em.
if
we have
issues,
problems, then we can-
We need to readdress it.
Yeah, we
Okay,
definitely
so
need them.
this is not something that we budgeted. We can certainly put it in next year's budget, but it's not a big line item. I don't, you know, why wait?
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah. So then that
Yeah.
council
Go
will
for
just
it.
have to
Yeah,
approve
there's
the
no price
expenditure.
on
My only
I'm saving a
suggestion would
life.
be maybe having
Do it.
2 at the ball field here, because you're so far apart, I would
No,
think.
there's
that-
four, there's four, let's see.
You're
Oh,
right,
I
though,
see,
because the
1, 2,
distance
3,
between
4.
field
yeah.
8 and
Like, I could
field
see
1
Larry Mills, you know, most of all the fields are up top. There's only 1 field or 2 fields down below. And that's kind of, I don't know, maybe you need 2 there, but I would, for Plum Creek,
Yeah, you probably
I mean,
need
you're
one back near
literally-
field 8.
Yeah.
or
I mean,
maybe
if
near-
you
That's
have
a good
one at the
point.
We do maybe
concession.
one on one side of the street
That's a
and
good-
one on the
yeah.
other, and then
Yeah.
down the ball fields, we'll try to spread them out. So
Yeah,
it takes it to 5, so you're adding another,
But
I
it's
mean,
worth
I'm
it.
not
It's
sure.
gonna
Yeah,
save
I'm okay
somebody's
with that.
life.
I'm-
I'm just thinking in
No.
the sense of.
$600.
$900, yeah.
It's worth it to save somebody's life.
Transfer, right.
It's just a thought.
Yeah, I think you're
No,
dead
I think that's a
right.
good idea.
Because it's a pretty big park to have one. And you
Yeah.
can't really really conveniently locate it centrally,
Right.
the way it's set up
Okay.
there.
So that will be an agenda item then?
Yeah.
Yes.
All right, item number 11 is the 2022 MMO. We do this every year. I am required to submit to you prior to the September 30th, the MMO as calculated by the actuary for 2022. And that's last year's number, right?
It says 2022 on it.
It's a resolution 90820, this year, sorry.
Yeah.
So the other, but the actual MMO is calculated by, Fazzola, the actual paperwork from Fazzola. Do you have? Because we have the option on the police to choose 2 different amounts. Is this the lower amount?
That's the higher amount.
Okay. So, what we've done in the past is the actuary calculates the MMO. The MMO for Public Works, Administration, and Clerical are what they are because they're really not actuarially determined. It's our obligation per employee times 12.
Mhm.
You know, it's not really actuarial. I mean, it's just simple math. The MMO for the amount for the police is calculated based on an actuarial basis, and because under let me go back, I think. Is it 600? Not 600. 600? No, let's see, anyway, under the Act, we're required to do the assessment every 2 years. I can't think of the Act number. I think it's Act 500. The base year used for the calculation can be selected every other year. You can use your previous base year. So there is a lower number that's possible for the police that would take that number down by, if memory serves me correctly, by about $100,000. What I've always advised in the past is that, so your MMO, when you adopt this MMO of $1.4 million, when we get audited, because we get audited, the auditor's gonna come in from the Auditor General's office. He's gonna come in and give me a copy of your resolution, and they're gonna see 1487843. and they're gonna say, show me where you put 14873 in your pension plans. But actuarially, to keep the plan actuarially sound under the act, we have the option of choosing the lower value for the police department, which again, if memory serves me, is about $100,000 cheaper for this year. So what I've always advised is adopt your MMO at the lower amount, because then you're only obligated to put in the lower amount. Budget the higher amount. If for some, because what we do with the MMO is we make periodic contributions to the MMO. We don't, it's not one lump sum at the end. So let's say, for example, that, you know, we're having a bad year, gas prices go out of control. You know, we have some other unforeseen expenses, and we could use that $120,000. We're not obligated to put it in if you put the lower amount in your MMO. You budget for the higher amount so that we can hopefully put the higher amount in. That's just always my advice to you on the MMO. And I'll get you the exact, tomorrow I'll email you out the exact amount for the police. The other three amounts for Public Works, Administration, and Clerical will not change. There are no options there.
Okay. Discussion? Agenda item.
Item number 12 is the Plum Boro Municipal Authority bond guarantee. I've included all the guarantee ordinance, the advertisement, and all the bond-related documents, and all the tabs there. There's quite a bit of documents there that explain the opinion of bond counsel, the opinion of the engineer, explanation of the issue itself, what the use of funds is and everything. I don't know, let me see, what's in the advertisements? So remember how when we talk about the not to exceed numbers, they're actually a lot higher than the actual number that will be borrowed at any time. I'm just looking in here, I don't know, Bruce, do you know when they plan to do this?
I don't know that they're gonna be able to, Bob, you can maybe help me. Do you think this gets done this year?
I think they're trying to do it this year to take advantage of the savings.
If it's gonna happen, it's gonna probably be December. Chances are it'll be I bet it's next year, but if they get it done, it'll be December.
Okay, so they, what's their advertisement? The first thing on it is the advertisement. No, that's the ordinance. Where's the advertisement? Pre-advertisement. Notice is hereby given that on September 13th at 7 p.m. the Plum Boro Municipal Authority will consider the adoption of an ordinance authorizing the incurrence of lease run of debt, of which the following is a summary of the ordinance. So they're anticipating council adopting the ordinance guaranteeing the issue on Monday.
So let me ask you a question. If they don't get the work done this, I mean, if we just go ahead and vote to guarantee this bond issue, and does that obligate them to take a bond out?
No,
Then
no,
what's
not
the
at all.
discussion? Then why don't we just,
You
we do
understand,
this every year, it's a,
For you, the rationale for you guaranteeing it is we get a lower interest rate.
right.
That's all. That's the advantage.
It's like Dad signing for a co-signing for a
Yeah,
car
I mean,
loan.
they can raise rates. I mean,
Right, right.
you would never be, I shouldn't say never. You would not be required to ever repay this because they have the ability to raise rates for water and sewer. So, it's really a financing mechanism to reduce the interest rate.
So by us passing this next week and agreeing to it, it doesn't do, it's just
It's
a
kind of
good gesture on our
perfunctory.
part.
It's really a perfunctory act. It helps them out on interest.
On interest. Okay. Discussion. Agenda item.
Item number 13 is the Horizon AV proposal. So if you've had a chance to look at the proposal in your agenda packets, now I know that I've mentioned to you guys in over the last few months as we've been working on this project, the technology that we've built into this building. It is, and the purpose of the technology is not to be cool and be on the cutting edge of things. It is all about making things easier for everybody to understand, to see what's going on, and to enhance a lot of our public events that we have. at this new facility. We did not include this equipment in the original bid, because just like we did with the other key fobs and security cameras, we felt that we could get better pricing and control the type of equipment that we're getting, because we're not at the mercy of what the contractor's buying through doing this. And all of this stuff is off state contracts, so it's all, guaranteed low pricing off the state contracts. It does not have to be bid. This is a budgeted item, but I do want to draw your attention only because we've talked about this number before, but it is not an insignificant one. We were not intending to have council approve this expense at this contract at this time. We're probably going to look to do it closer to the actual, once the building is under roof. But Verizon reached out to us and said, because as the way everything else is going, if you haven't noticed, prices are going up considerably for things.
Yep.
And they're telling us that if we don't place this, or if they don't place this order soon, we will be looking at about a 10% increase. So if you've seen the bottom line, that's $100,000.
Yep.
So it is the recommendation of staff at this time this is paid through the bond issue, it was budgeted. This is a
Just
budget
accept
expense,
it.
it's not yet. It's staff's recommendation at this time to authorize the release of the Verizon contract for this project.
Yeah, because I know from having done other similar projects that he's right, this equipment is not cheap, and it's not going to get cheaper.
It's hard to get too.
Some of it is hard to
Yeah.
get.
Can we expedite it?
I would be surprised.
What if it rains, man? What if it rains?
And by the way, I know I've said this before, but I would encourage you guys, if anybody would like to take a tour of the building as it sits right now.
I do.
Just
Yeah.
let me know. I'm happy to take you down there and show you around. And I took the mayor down. He was very impressed with the size of the facility and what it looks like.
Should we wear our hard hats?
You can't, yes. Well, if there's equipment operating, you have to, yes.
All right, I'll make sure to bring mine with me.
Okay, any other discussion? Agenda item.
Okay. Item number 14 is the New Texas Road bids. So as you if you come down New Texas Road, at Center New Texas Road there, right by the cemetery and the church right there, that culvert that goes underneath there, comes from the stream that runs along the cemetery there. That culvert was severely damaged in 2019. So we need to restore it, rebuild it.
You can barely see through it.
The project was actually bid out a while ago. We accepted bids yesterday, Mayor? Yeah, yesterday, right? We did only receive one bid from Pugliano Construction for a bid price of $86,966. That is right in line with what we've budgeted. If you recall, 2 months ago, I had council authorize a resolution indicating the use of certain funds from all these borrowings and the money that we received. That is right in line with the notes. It's a few $1,000s higher than what we anticipated. But it's also the only bid we received. As far as the contractor is concerned, we've worked with Pugliano Construction a number of times with great results, so we're very happy. We're very comfortable recommending them as well.
I see the other one came in late, so they're,
The other one, yeah,
It's a
the other
moot-
one's
it's a moot
unacceptable
point
anyway,
anyway,
'cause
right?
it came in late, but it was $100,000 more.
yeah, we wouldn't have went for it anyway.
Yeah.
Any discussion? Agenda item.
Item number 15 is the Plum Community Center sublease. I can't remember who was all on council when we did the West Arm
Yep.
sublease, but basically what we did is West Arm sublease is some space up at the community center, and the community center gets a couple $100. They get $500 a month. But the borough owns the building, so the sublease has to be with the borough, not
Right.
the community center. Same thing in this case. They have found someone who's interested in renting, leasing the commercial kitchen there. So I guess I can say, those of us in the food business, if you're a mobile food vendor, you have to have a commercial kitchen to work out of. So they've got somebody that's interested in leasing the kitchen. Same thing as the West Arm thing. It would have to be a deal between the borough and the lessee, and then the borough would have to agree to contribute the lease payments back to the community center, which we do the similar way we do the West
Right.
Arm. So Karen had taken a shot at some lease language, and some of it is good because it's specific to the rental of the kitchen facilities themselves. But at this point, I would just, ask you to authorize me to work with Dane and Bruce to finalize the lease language. If we can get it done by Monday night, we'll have you guys approve it. If not, we can table it for the next month's meeting.
Okay, so agenda item pending, it being ready to go.
And finally, the last item, but again, we do have two executive session items to discuss. The Verizon right-of-way agreement, so again, new facility, we are running redundant service, fiber optic service to the building. So Verizon is running Fios service to the building.
Good.
In order to do that, though, they need some additional right-of-way to be able to place their equipment on our property. So their head-end equipment, if you will, gets installed underground before it goes to the building. They need right-of-way, a legal right-of-way, so what you have in your packets is the proposed right-of-way agreement and resolution to adopt.
Doesn't affect any residents or,
No, it's just the right-of-way on the property of the
Yeah.
new building itself.
right, because there's,
Yeah.
okay.
So that allows us to go with whatever service we end up going with. We get them
Make sure
in.
they don't
and
put it on the
Comcast,
sewer
right.
lines.
We have redundant service.
We can change midstream if we need to.
Just make sure someone's there, they don't put it on the sewer line.
Okay, agenda item. Any- Okay, with that, we'll adjourn to executive session. Thank you very much.
And there's a very specific sketch. There's not a meets and bounds description.
Well, that's all right, but this is a sketch there,
Yep.
you can track it down in the future.
Yes.
Now, I don't have. I'm a little bit
Here, here. Yeah. So,
Okay, all right.
so here's Public Works coming down.
Oh, you know what?
Four
I
underneath
owe
here,
you,
or so, coming down the hillside to a pole and boring that way.
Yeah, okay,
Yeah.
all right, so there's something.
Yep,
What, this is the,
that's the fire department.
that's the fire department,